Whoa, this video has been a long time in the making, not because I haven't checked out an RTX 3070 yet. I've already checked out two, which you can find somewhere on the channel, but because for the first time ever on this channel, I'll be taking a look at a Gigabyte product. That's right, after many months of desperately standing in front of Gigabyte HQ, blaring all of the most cringy 80s love songs I could find, and just begging my senpais to notice me, the company finally caved in and sent me something to review. And as you've probably guessed it, they sent over their RTX 3070 gaming OC for me to check out. And in this video, I'll be putting it through the benchmark gauntlet to see what it's made of, and we'll revisit whether any RTX 3070 is actually worth getting, now that it's not the only kid on the block anymore. But if you're ready to pull the trigger on the card or any of the other parts I'll be mentioning in this video already, go ahead and do it via my affiliate links via Amazon down below to help the channel out. Or if you're in South Africa, buy all the things you want from Wootware to help yourself out to some amazing deals and just the best damn customer service in South Africa. Now, at $550 or around 14,000 Rand here in South Africa, the RTX 3070 Gaming OC is at the lower end of the price stack and actually presents a pretty decent value if you can find it for that price. Which you can't right now, but you know, just work with me here. It's also one of the more accessible 3070s around right now, which actually does count for something with the GPU market the way it is right now. But look, just because something's more affordable and attainable doesn't mean it's any good, so let's properly get into this review. And where better to start off with than looks. And on that front, it's a bit of a disappointment. Overall, the card is very unassuming, subdued, and compared to a few of its competitors, a little dull too. The color scheme is pretty damn classic with an all black and silver design, with clean lines everywhere, but something about it just seems kind of off to me. Yes, it should look fine in almost all system configurations, but it's not exactly going to win any beauty pageants. I feel like Gigabyte missed the mark quite a bit with the design of the card, especially compared to the absolute glory that is the Aorus range, and especially the Master range, and even compared to their own 20 series cards, it definitely falls a little flat. Kind of like their render files kept getting corrupted, and after like 6 months of trying to sort it out, they just smashed it all together, smoothed it out, and called it a day. It's a very average looking card. Not particularly hard to look at, but also not something you'd brag about at parties. Kind of like having chlamydia. But the general design isn't nearly as important as the RGB implementation, and I'm sure that's where the card will really oh no. The card has RGB illuminated Gigabyte branding on the side, and a teensy little light strip below it, and then nothing else. That's pretty much it. The usage of RGB lighting is about as minimal as it gets, isn't especially creative in any way, but it's there. Kind of like having a deep fried spaghetti donut with pilchards and tripe versus starving. It's not a good solution, but it's better than nothing. I know that's a bit harsh, and I do like that there's at least some RGB tossed in there, fully customizable RGB using the RGB Fusion 2.0 software at that, but I really just wish it was used in a more impactful way. Now, onto build quality. The card doesn't particularly excel here either. The shroud features about as much plastic as at least 50% of the Kardashian family, but unlike the Kardashian family, it still has some redeemable features. While the shroud is mostly plastic, it feels relatively premium, or at least as premium as plastic can get, and overall it feels durable and solid. And with it being a 3-slot thick card, that solidness is a very comforting thing. And speaking of solid, while I don't really like celebrating the addition of a metal backplate, as I think that should be the norm for pretty much all graphics cards, it's appropriate here because some of the other manufacturers this generation opted to go for plastic backplates, even on their more premium cards, which definitely deserves a slap on the wrist. Overall, the card seems to be built pretty well, and at its price point, all the plastic is kind of to be expected. The only flaw I encountered was that some areas of the shroud where plastic meets plastic wasn't quite flush, leading to getting like your sweater stuck in a nail kind of situation. It's not the end of the world, as you probably shouldn't be rubbing your like expensive tech on a like sweater anyway, but hey, you do you. What the Gigabyte 3070 Gaming OC somewhat lacks in the looks department, it luckily tries to make up for where it really counts. Cooling. Just like the majority of the cards in this generation of GPUs, the 3070 Gaming OC features a very hefty heatsink design, one with a ton of surface area for heat dispersal and heat pipes that make direct contact with the GPU itself. Gigabyte, just like a lot of other manufacturers, also took a page out of Nvidia's book by introducing a pretty big cutout in the 3070 Gaming OC's backplate where the PCB ends, which Gigabyte calls screen cooling, and that supposedly allows air to flow right through the heatsink and the card in general and leads to extra cooling. Yeah. This generation has also seen the introduction of an alternate fan spinning kind of thing, which basically means that the middle fan spins the opposite direction of the two fans next to it, which supposedly reduces airflow turbulence, optimizes airflow pressure, and reduces noise. Let me just check the science on that. Hey, yeah, Professor? Yeah. Yeah. They spin the opposite way. Oh, it does? Oh, really? Oh, okay, that's awesome. Yeah. I'll see you next weekend. All right, cheers. Well, science checks out. The design of the fans themselves is pretty unique, with ridges and triangular designs on the blades, which Gigabyte claims splits and guides airflow through the fans. The fans are also apparently lubed right the heck up with graphene nano lubricant, which supposedly extends the lifespan of the fans by more than double compared to double ball bearing fans, while also running a little quieter. All of that combined makes up Gigabyte's WindForce 3X cooling system, and it should ensure that the card stays as cool as Outkast shouting, "What's cooler than ice cold?" Which is to say, ice cold. One thing Gigabyte could have definitely improved on here was using melted orbit menthol for their thermal paste. I mean, in the ads, those things really freeze up the screen, so total missed opportunity there. Something Gigabyte didn't miss out on was the inclusion of a dual BIOS switch on the card, which to most people isn't a big deal at all, but if you accidentally flash your card with the wrong BIOS and brick it, you're definitely going to appreciate the crap out of that little switch. The card also has the correct output arrangement with 2 DisplayPort 1.4 and 2 HDMI 2.1 ports. And it even features a nice little overclock of 1815 MHz on the core, which is about 85 more than Nvidia's own reference card. Now, enough talk. Let's roll some benchmarks and see how all of this translates into actual gaming performance. We've got a brand new test bench system to work with this time around, and if you want to watch me put that together, you can check that out over here somewhere. First up is the Ryzen 7 3800 XT clocked at 4.5 GHz with a 360mm AIO to keep temps in check. Then we've got an X570 Gaming Pro Carbon, 2 16GB sticks of Crucial's Ballistics RGB memory running at 3600 CL16, Antek's EAG Pro 750W PSU, and for our game drive we've got Crucial's super speedy P5 NVMe drive. Now, let's kick things off at 1080p, and coming in as a surprise to absolutely no one considering we're usually CPU bound at this resolution with 3070s, the card crushed it at this resolution, with averages way higher than 100 FPS in all but 2 of the games tested, with equally impressive 1% low numbers. And even in the case of AC Valhalla and Metro Exodus, where the card didn't post outrageously high numbers, both titles still average more than 80 FPS, and 1% lows above the threshold where you'd actually notice any performance issues. At 1440p, we do see a decent, although completely expected dip in performance, but the card still averaged 60 FPS and above in more cinematic-driven games, and stuck to well over 100 FPS in faster-paced competitive titles. The 1% numbers aren't half bad either, with most of the titles never dipping below 60 FPS, and in the case of the worst performers, never below 35 FPS. And at the quality settings we were working with here, these numbers are fantastic, and proves yet again that the RTX 3070 is built for and excels at this resolution. Which is not to say that the card can't handle a bit of 4K, mind you. At 4K, we do see the numbers tank quite a bit, with a couple of games just barely dipping below what I'd consider an enjoyable experience, but the rest of the titles ran just fine. Because the card isn't really built for 4K using the high settings we were using, I would recommend dropping down a step in quality if you want to make the most out of the card's performance, and at 4K the drop in quality really is barely noticeable. And for the performance you'll get out of it, it's totally worth it. When it comes to the latest R-rated word, RTX, the card held up just about as well as expected, largely thanks to Nvidia's DLSS 2.0 working its magic. At 1440p with RTX cranked to the max and a touch of DLSS 2.0, all the games tested hit and almost maintained that 60 FPS sweet spot the entire time, which is fantastic for anyone looking at this card to dip their toes into ray tracing. All in all, a pretty impressive showing from Gigabyte with their RTX 3070 gaming OC. It further proves that anyone looking at high fidelity gaming at 1440p and damn decent experience at 4K might just want to grab a 3070. During testing, the card just barely made it into the 2 GHz club with a max core clock of 2010 MHz, only about 15 MHz slower than 2 of the other cards I've taken a look at. It also fell perfectly in line with the cooling performance of the other cards I've tested, maxing out at 70 degrees C with an ambient room temp of 27 degrees. Where the card didn't quite fit the mold though was with the method it used to keep itself cool. In order to stick to its fairly impressive 70 degree max, it ramped fan speed up all the way up to 80%, or 2100 RPM, which is significantly higher than the max I saw on both the other 3070s I've checked out. While there's nothing really wrong with this brute force fan speed approach to cooling, rather than one, centered around more efficient cooler design, it does make it one of the louder cards I've worked with. Luckily, the fairly noisy fans didn't come with coil whine to back them up, as I didn't notice any with this particular card. Now, with all that said and done, should you buy the Gigabyte RTX 3070 gaming OC? Well, if you already have your heart set on getting a 3070, then this really isn't a bad one to consider. It's by almost every definition a nice little middle-of-the-pack card. It doesn't have the flashy looks, the mind-blowing gaming performance, or the crazy cooling performance or low noise of some of the other 3070s out there. But at its price, or at least the price it's supposed to be selling for, but isn't because the entire GPU market is an absolute dumpster fire right now, you're getting what you pay for, and a little bit more. And that, I think, makes it a pretty dang decent choice, even when compared to its closest rivals, namely the RTX 3060 Ti and, the RX 6800. Just like it was a great choice for Gigabyte South Africa to give in and let me review their card, so major props to you guys. And just as many props to everyone who uses my affiliate links in the description down below to buy any of the parts featured in this video. You guys rock. Almost as much as Wootware, which is the only PC tech shop you should be buying from in South Africa. Just because. They're also linked down below, so go check them out. And yeah, do the like, do the share, do the subscribe thing if you haven't already, and stay safe out there, folks. Cheers.